Pleased to be joined at this time by the Hall of Famer, Jim Kelly, joining us on the line now. And Jim, Steve was just talking about the difference between quarterbacks being great and legendary, and then he immediately referenced your tackle after an interception on one Anthony Phillips, which is kind of appropriate considering the Bills are playing the Falcons this week. This is back in '95. How well do you remember the play?
Well, the bad part I remember about it was an interception. And of course, nobody ever wants to do something that ruins somebody's career or knocks them out because of injury. And I just, as Steve well knows, that when it comes to interceptions, I'm not going to run away from it. I'm going at him. I'm going to try to stop him from doing what he's got to do. And it's my fault that I threw it, but it was one of those things. And that's one thing you never want to see. And that's a ouch. I had to turn my head. But, yeah, it is what it is. And, I'm just glad I didn't have to do that a lot.
Yeah, exactly. That, and I was just comparing it because there's some of the quarterbacks of our generation, like Dan and like John Elway, earlier in our careers with Dan Fouts when he was still playing, even Montana, and none of those quarterbacks would chase down. They may move over there or whatever. They never tried to make a tackle. They were always ducking at it. You were the only one that kind of went after the guy because you were, I think, the angriest after interceptions of any quarterback in the league, and I think that's why you ended up breaking Anthony Phillips' leg.
Well, one of the reasons I always go after him, whether it's an interception or whatever, is because I grew up in a family of 6 boys. And it didn't matter. You're going to get in a fight a few times here and there, and you just have to go back at it. And I just know that I wanted to do my part. And I know nowadays they probably tell the quarterback, just get away from it. Don't even try to do that. But back in our day, it's one of those things where you threw the interception, and if you are able to stop a touchdown or a major gain, then you would do that. And you're right. Elway might have been able to do it, or he might have done that. Marino, man, he couldn't catch a fly if he was trying. Montana, pretty much the same way. But there are quarterbacks that probably would have done what I did, but not many.
Yeah. Joe was a little guy. He wasn't a big guy, so I don't think he'd want to be mixing it up too much. So, Jim, topic of conversation today that we're having with the listening audience, what area of Josh Allen's game might be even better this year than it was last year? Because I thought last week, Jim, that Josh took a step. That's the quickest I've ever seen him go to checkdowns. He threw the ball away when he was in trouble instead of taking a sack and moving his team out of field goal range, which is something he was still doing just a month ago. So where do you think Josh's game may be even better this year than last year?
Well, it depends. At the beginning of the season, I'm like, okay, what's he doing? I mean, take what they give you. I mean, always trying to get the big play. And then there'll be a couple games that he didn't. And then there's a couple games that he didn't do it. So always was wondering which game was it when he was going to step up and really understand what he's got to do, number one, to stay healthy. I think when you are a quarterback and you start going through your progressions and you start dumping it off when you have to, you don't have to worry about running it. But with Josh, he's such a great athlete. He knows it. He knows what he can do with his legs, and we all know what he can do with his legs. And I think opponents want him to be able to come off that first one, pull it down, and, they can say what they want. And Steve will be right there with me with this one. Every defensive player would love to hit him as far as, not dirty, but hard enough that it would put him out of the game. There's no doubt. I mean, if anybody tells you that they would not try to hurt a quarterback, especially one with Josh's caliber, they are lying. I know. That's the same way I was whether it was high school or whatever. When I played defense in high school, I wanted to hit that guy so hard that it would knock him out of the game. You don't want to knock him out so, he misses the rest of the season, but enough to know that he knows you are there. And I think Josh, one of the things that he's getting better at is dumping it off when he has to. And sometimes I think I talked to him last week. I stopped over and I said, you know what? Start giving it to the guys that run after catches. Let them run with it after they catch it. You don't need to be running so much because I guess I should say, and not only frightens me sometimes, but I'm sure every single person watching that are part of Bills Mafia, when they see Josh running, they're like, oh no, get down. So I get it.
What do you I don't know if you ever went through this too much, but the Bills ran three wides a lot in the K gun. You had Andre, Beebs, and James Lofton, or whoever the combination might have been. But the Bills right now have a problem. It's kind of a good problem to have. They got Cole Beasley, who's contributed and made a lot of really tough catches and is really dependable. You got Steph Diggs, who's a top receiver in the NFL. Emmanuel Sanders, who's been a starter and progressed and contributed on a regular basis. Now you got Isaiah McKenzie and Gabriel Davis. Both those guys, whenever they've gotten a chance, they have like almost overperformed when they've gotten in. It's been amazing to see how those guys have done it. What's your advice to either Brian Daboll, Sean McDermott, Josh, all those? How do you handle the fact that you can only put 3 or 4 guys on at the same time? What do you do, and how would you handle that?
Well, bottom line is Josh has to feel comfortable with whatever receivers are in there. And if he feels the same about pretty much all of them, then you don't change one thing. I mean, I've always thought McKenzie was a heck of a receiver, he's quick. I still don't understand why they took him off the punt return, because to me, he was unbelievable. I know there's some rumors out there, reason, but I'll tell you what, the kid is exciting. He gets it done. Davis, I would just rotate, keep healthy, and keep a fresh wide receiver out there. As long as Josh feels comfortable that they all are on the same page, and you know that also, Steve, is you have to be on the same page with your receivers, because if you're thinking you're going to throw a back shoulder pass to him and he's not ready for it, and then wasted play. I remember when Andre and them got hurt, it was you and Billy Brooks came in, and there was not one time where I thought, oh, man, I can't believe this is happening. And, Steve, I know you get tired of hearing me say this, but I wish you would have been one of my wide receivers and we would have ran 4 wides a lot. But the reason we didn't is because we had such a good running game and we needed that tight end in order to block. So we were more like, 65, 35, something like that, to run the pass, or 65, 40, whatever, 60, 40. But the bottom line is they are blessed. They have a lot of receivers who can step right in.
Yeah. And that might be the biggest difference, when people try to compare this offense to the offense you guys ran. Their running game isn't as prolific as yours was. You guys had a Hall of Famer at running back. That always helps. But, the situation here now, Singletary has kind of established himself as the primary ball carrier. It was big-time committee stuff earlier in the season, and he's kind of emerged here, Jim. I know he's not getting a ton of carries now, but he's made the run game at least functional to a point where the defenses at least have to respect it. How much of a difference can that make for this passing game?
Huge. And the thing is, I don't think they give him enough credit. I don't think they give him enough opportunities. I think if they did, I think they could get this running game going a lot better than a lot of people think. He is one heck of a back. He is quick. He's small, which is good, because a lot of people, he can disguise, I guess the word can be, where he wants to go, whether he cuts back or whether he goes, strong side or whatever the case may be. I think for a defensive linebacker, when you're so small, sometimes you get lost in that shuffle when you have all those big guys up front. So I think their running game could go a lot better if they would just give it an opportunity and not just always rely on Josh's arm, because those defensive linemen, majority of the time, they're rushing the passer 100% of the time. And that puts so much pressure on them offensive linemen, especially the tackles, knowing that they're one-on-one on the outside and they're going to throw the football. The more you mix it up, the more it'll slow down that pass rush. That's my personal opinion. Yeah, I know I was blessed to have Thurman, but I think Singletary's a heck of a back. Moss is pretty good too. So give them more of an opportunity to show we have a running game.
One of the things that surprised me about that game last week, Jim, was that they went in and the offensive line was a real question mark. They had Butker. They had moved Spencer Brown to left tackle. He got that game in the week before. It kind of was up and down, pretty struggled mightily at times against Carolina. But the offensive line was shuffled once again. And then during the game, Ike Butker goes down to his Achilles injury, and they shuffle it during the game. And so now they got to finish up the game 2.5 quarters of yet another offensive lineup. And on top of that, they played really well up front, in my opinion, this last week. What do you do going forward now that you got Feliciano coming off the injured reserve or the COVID list? You've got Spencer Brown, who's played right and left now. Now you've got a chance to get the 5 guys you thought you'd have at the beginning of the season on the field. Do you change it from last week because they played so well? Ryan Bates had a game at offensive guard a lot like the game that Isaiah McKenzie had at wide receiver. He overproduced. You know what I'm saying?
You know what, Steve? The thing is, you know what? I don't look at film, of course, anymore. But I'm sure the coaches have a good indication where they should go, what they should do, and I'll leave that to them because, as you well know, and I've talked to Tom Brady many times. He said having the same offensive line, having the same system under me year after year after year makes everything so much easier. And I'm sure Josh probably could say the same thing, that he would like to have those 5 guys up front the same week in and week out. But as we well know, very physical game. You'd never know who's going to be in there this week compared, especially with COVID now. You never know. But the thing is, you just have to continue to hope that these guys understand what their position is that they're playing, because they might move from guard to tackle, left side to the tackle on right side. You never know from week to week what's going to happen, but you just got to feel comfortable as a quarterback.
Talking with Bills Hall of Fame quarterback Jim Kelly. And, Jim, I'd love to get your thoughts on this wacky AFC race, because I can't remember a time where we've seen it this tightly packed this late in the season. Usually one or two teams emerge. You'll have like a 2-loss team late in the year. They've got the number 1 seed locked up. I mean, Kansas City is in good shape, but even so, Tennessee's within a game of them. Cincinnati and the Bills are right behind. And you got a mess of teams that are still in the hunt here. Do you remember a time when you've ever seen it this tightly packed top to bottom?
Well, not within the last 20-some years, I have not. And the thing is, you look at that list, 3 out of the 4 from the AFC East. And, Miami, whoever thought that they would win 7 in a row? I think it's 6 or 7 in a row.
7, yeah.
Are you kidding me? I can't believe that. And, of course, everybody knows New England at any given week, they can rise and be the team that they thought they were. So the Bills, it's in their own hands. They win out, they're champions.
Yeah, and I think that's where they want to be. I don't know that, at this point you even start to think about what the matchups might be down the road, but it's a good chance, a couple of chances, that they may end up playing New England again back here in Buffalo in the first round, that wild card round of the playoffs, because of the percentages and the way things are going to fall. What are your thoughts on 3 teams from the division getting into the tournament and what that might mean as how it washes out?
Well, number one, I would love it. I would love to see New England come back to Buffalo and play. Cold is, that's a given, but not weather like they had the last time they played them, and have them in our hometown. Can you imagine what that would do, not only for the players knowing that they're coming back here after they beat us with a quarterback threw the ball 3 times? Imagine what that would do to the Bills Mafia. Imagine how many tables will be broken out in the parking lot. I'm telling my nephew, Zach, man, you can't be breaking tables. No more of this stuff. You have to maybe watch, but don't maybe try to talk somebody out of it. I would love to see that. As long as the Bills win the AFC East, they win out, then I don't care who we play.
Yeah,
right.
I know you and Steve are big proponents of home field advantage in the playoffs, and we believe it has its advantages. Bills are 4-3 at home this year, with a couple of home games to play. They get 9 this year with the 17-game schedule. But come playoffs, home field advantage, no matter what you did in the regular season, still carries weight, right?
Mentally, it does. Yeah, there's no doubt. Mentally, for a player, you always want to be at home. You want to sleep in your own bed the night before, whether you don't want to have to be out of town. I think that gets the fans all riled up. Just try not to get too pumped up. But anytime you have that, it's an advantage from the standpoint of for the opposing quarterback. If we can get these fans going crazy when whoever the team is coming in, if we're more of a passing team, then you want those fans to go crazy. Make sure that maybe that snap might be just a little bit late and that defensive alignment on ours can get upfield. It's always an advantage, I think, especially in playoff time when it comes around to advance with the fans because they do make a big difference.
Jim, I know you watched all of last season when they were 13-3, and coming into this year, there was high expectations, and the team has been it was up and down for a stretch. Now it looks like they're starting to find themselves a lot like the Kansas City Chiefs did earlier in the season. You know, these teams find it. The Colts, the same thing. They started a slow start. They're starting to find themselves. What have you seen about this team this year, and maybe Josh or maybe something else, that is different than it was a year ago when, you know, we were all kind of surprised at how well they played last year. This year we kind of expected it. What have you seen that's been different about this year than it was last year when we were all so surprised at their success?
Well, one thing that's different is we did not win all the games that we should have won. You look at Jacksonville, you look at some of these teams that we played. I mean, I know we played some tough teams, and I understand that. But we always said, I remember, Steve, we never wanted to look forward. We always said, we got to take care of this. Is one we're supposed to win. We got to win this one. So you stay focused. And after that Jacksonville game, I said, I just hope later on down the road this doesn't come back to bite us because those must-win games you got to win because everybody said, oh, we'll put that to the side. We'll move on. We'll focus. I get that. But when it comes to the end of the season, when you and another team with the same record, look at the wins and losses, you look who you won, you look who you lost against, those might come back to haunt you. I hope it doesn't. I hope some of these games that we lost where we thought we were going to win, when it happened, I'm like, oh, no, I hope this doesn't come back to bite us. But it is what it is. You move on. And as a player, you might think a little bit different. And the Bills Mafia thinks week in and week out. I know for a fact we do. But you always got to say the right thing, especially when you're a former player.
Jim, one last thing. Thanks so much for taking a minute to come in with us. I know we don't ask you too often, but when we do, you're always great about coming on the show. Last thing I want to talk to you about, yesterday morning, John Madden passed away. And for guys in our industry who've been in it like you and I have, 30-plus years for me and same for you, once in a while, and you as a Hall of Famer probably brushed up against him way more than I did. I knew him from his legacy as a broadcaster because I went with CBS and I heard story after story after story about what he contributed to the industry. Did you know him once you got in the Hall of Fame, that kind of thing? Did you ever cross paths with John Madden? What are your thoughts?
Oh, yeah, I have. I don't remember all the conversations. It was more like, one heck of a career, or even when we played, it wasn't like we saw him all the time because, week in, week out, you're always with, a different broadcast crew, not all the time. But class guy, he's one of those guys where you talk to, whether it's a Dave Casper who went into Hall of Fame with me, Matt Millen, saying that's a guy anybody would love to play for. And he's just one of those guys you just look at and smile and say, boy, wouldn't it have been awesome to play for him? Even though we did have one of the best coaches ever to play for, and that was Marv Levy. But John Madden was in a league of his own, just a different type of coach. The old cliche, a player's coach, and he's one that you'd want to be around.
All right, Jim, listen, thanks for the time. Enjoy the week and the game coming up against the Falcons, and have a Happy New Year, all right?
Happy
all
New
our
Year,
best
bro.
to your family.
Yeah.
Take care.
Back at you guys. Love you guys. Have a good one. And Tasker, I did a big thing on you making the Pro Football Hall of Fame. You're in there, bud. I hope so.
Yeah. Coming up.
Crossed.
Coming up this week. All right. Yeah. All right. Thanks, Jim. Appreciate the well wishes.
Yeah, buddy. Later.
Yeah.